Dr. Cathara's forearms trembled as she documented the catastrophic failure. The Zephyrian High Command had commissioned her research team to study human emotional responses, believing they could weaponize the species' notorious irrationality. After 3 cycles of careful observation, they had identified what seemed like the perfect target: human grief. The logic had been flawless. Grief paralyzed humans, made them weak and vulnerable. When a human lost someone precious, they would curl into themselves, become non-functional for extended periods. The Zephyrians had witnessed this during their initial conquest attempts. Humans would simply stop fighting when their companions fell. It was their greatest weakness. Commander Vex had been enthusiastic about the project. "Imagine," he had said, his serpentine form coiled in excitement, "if we could induce artificial grief in human populations, they would become docile, manageable. No more of their unpredictable resistance." The weapon they developed was elegant in its simplicity. The grief inducer transmitted specific neural frequencies that triggered the same synaptic patterns associated with profound loss. Early tests on captured human subjects had been promising. The humans had indeed become lethargic, unresponsive, easy to control. But Dr. Cathara had made a critical error in her analysis. She had only observed the immediate response to grief, not its long-term effects. The first sign something was wrong came from the mining colony on Kepler 442b. The Zephyrians had deployed the weapon system across the entire human settlement, expecting the population to become compliant workers. For the first few days, it worked perfectly. The humans moved slowly, barely spoke, offered no resistance to their new overlords. Then Captain Sarah Chen found her voice. Chen had been a decorated officer in the human colonial navy before her capture. The artificial grief had initially devastated her, filling her mind with phantom memories of losses that felt utterly real. But as days passed, something unexpected happened. The artificial nature of the emotion began to reveal itself, and with that revelation came something the Zephyrians had never encountered in their cold, calculating existence: righteous fury born from manipulated sorrow. Chen gathered the other colonists in the dead of night. Her voice was hoarse but steady as she addressed them. "They're playing with our hearts," she said. "They're making us feel loss that isn't real, grief for people who are still alive. They've turned our capacity to love into a weapon against us." The effect was instantaneous. One by one, the colonists began to recognize the artificial nature of their despair. And with that recognition came an emotion the Zephyrians had never factored into their calculations: vengeance. Grief, Dr. Cathara realized too late, was not just about loss. For humans, grief was intrinsically connected to love, memory, and the fierce determination to honor what had been taken from them. When that grief was revealed to be false, manufactured by an enemy, it transformed into something far more dangerous than any Zephyrian military strategist had ever imagined. The colonists didn't just resist, they became a force of nature. Chen led them in converting mining equipment into weapons. They turned their intimate knowledge of the colony's systems against their captors. Most terrifyingly, they began to coordinate with a level of tactical brilliance that seemed to emerge from their shared outrage. The Zephyrian garrison on Kepler 442b sent their final transmission before going dark. "The humans, they're not fighting like soldiers anymore. They're fighting like demons who've lost everything and have nothing left to lose." Within a week, similar reports came flooding in from every world where the grief inducer had been deployed. Humans were breaking free from the weapon's effects and retaliating with unprecedented ferocity. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to make their captors pay for daring to manipulate their capacity for love and loss. Dr. Cathara's research had uncovered a fundamental truth about human psychology that her species' emotionally sterile minds couldn't comprehend. Humans were most dangerous not when they felt nothing, but when they felt everything and channeled it into purpose. On the flagship of the human resistance fleet, Admiral Rebecca Torres studied the tactical reports with grim satisfaction. The Zephyrians had made the mistake of thinking they could use humanity's greatest strength, their emotional depth, against them. Instead, they had given humans something that their previous resistance efforts had lacked: a universal, personal reason to fight. Every human in the galaxy now knew that an alien species had reached into their minds and played puppet master with their deepest feelings. The violation was so profound, so intimate, that it had unified the scattered human colonies in ways that decades of political negotiation had failed to achieve. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 14 Zephyrian outposts. They're begging us to call off the attacks." Torres nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had learned too late that there was something far more terrifying than human grief. Human grief transformed into purpose, backed by human ingenuity and driven by human determination to ensure such a violation never happened again. Dr. Cathara's final report to the High Command was brief. Recommendation: immediate cessation of all operations against humans. We did not weaponize their emotion. We weaponized our own destruction. The galaxy would remember this lesson. Never attempt to manipulate a species whose love runs so deep that even artificial grief can become righteous anger, and whose anger, once awakened, burns hot enough to forge freedom from any chain.